Hey folks, welcome to another episode of In the Know. Sorry, I'm not good enough to adjust names for the pre-roll thing. But yes, this is not Schmidt. I'm
I
joined
look
here
a little different.
I'm joined by a guy who I've known for a long time, and this is a much overdue podcast. I think we can talk about a whole bunch of recent life events, as well as just anything about where the Pelicans are, where we think they're going to go over the last few weeks of the season. But Adam McCreary, great to have you. Again, just this has been a long time coming, but how's it going? How's life?
Pretty solid. We are experiencing very similar lives these days. We
Yep.
both have a dog and a newborn and a Pelicans podcast. So it's like looking in a mirror right now.
Yeah, it's been a ride over here. That's for sure. But Adam, do you want to, before we just jump into it, most people who watch our podcast also watch yours, and so it's not like you're introducing to a bunch of new people, but you want to give your intro and what you're doing and the podcast you host with Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, so I'm Adam McCreary, formerly just a guy kicking around Twitter watching the Pelicans too much and being really depressed. Got plucked out of obscurity by one Christian Clark, a.k.a. Pedro Pascal Jr., to host the From the Wing podcast for the Blue Wire Network. It's been a fun ride. Done a handful of these. We use a lot of the same equipment, so this is like, I feel like I'm just kind of putting on somebody else's clothes. But me and Mason have known each other basically since we were 15, which is pretty wild. We have a lot of groups of friends that have crossed each other's paths basically our entire lives. So here we are. Like, who knew that when we were hanging out in high school that this is where we'd be in our mid-30s?
Look how far we've come. Trying to manage
Look how far.
a podcast with day jobs and infants. But let's talk about that first, man. Like how's that been for you? The transition to trying to, in the middle of basketball season. I think we pick great times to have kids, like just in the middle of the season there. But what's that been like to transition in terms of trying to keep tabs on the team and do everything else?
Dude, I started a podcast while my wife was pregnant. That's maybe not the greatest timing, but the season was coming. So like we had to get some shows under our belt. So basically the entire pregnancy and beginning of my son's life has been the life of my podcast so far. It has led to some interesting scheduling changes, issues, early days, late nights. You just kind of got to make it work when it works. Luckily, Christian is very forgiving with me with my availability. I also have a day job, so we got to try to kind of get these done when we get them done. As far as keeping up with the Pels, I did not know what lengths I would go to watch games and to keep up with games. I never take in the game the same way that I used to. I used to be able to just sit back, watch the entire game, hear the broadcast the whole time. Now, 90% of the Pelican season has been played on my phone. And that phone is normally being held like right behind my son's shoulder as I'm holding him, because these games tip off right when he's supposed to go to bed. So I got night duty. So I'm putting him down. I'm holding it. I've got AD and Joel turned off, and I'm just like watching what's happening, trying not to yell or celebrate too loud. I've gone anywhere from sitting it up on a shelf in the room away from me and like squinting to look at it, to holding it underneath him, to sitting it up on his bed. Every angle I've tried. And then like I cheer too loud or something great happens and I make a loud noise and Lauren sticks her head in and goes, "What the hell are you doing?" Sorry, I have multiple jobs here. I have to do it all. How about you? You're earlier on in the process, so you're like lagging behind me just a little bit. And I know
by like a month. What is it again?
Yeah, things are getting easier now. Like we're just past 4 months. Things are starting to get easier right now. Like we have very, very set sleep windows. How long he stays down, debatable, but we have very set sleep windows, so that's good. Otherwise, I very, very clearly remember what you're going through right now because it just happened.
Yeah.
How are you holding up?
Yeah, so Sophie's about 10 weeks or so a little over 2 months. And it's every night's different, right? Like we're the same. Like I do the night shift until like it depends. It can be midnight. Some nights can be like 1 or 2 a.m. other nights. And it's so when Pelicans on the West Coast, I've like got it made. Like that's especially being on the East time. That's another wrinkle too, being on the Eastern time zone versus Central. But yeah, I mean, when the game starts at 10 or 10:30, I'm like, well, I'm up anyway. So it's like it used to be like, ugh, this is so late. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to stay up for this whole game with work tomorrow. If the Pelicans are losing by a lot at halftime, I'm out. And but this time it's like, all right, well, I'm in this anyway. And so that's actually those games are kind of better because better chance of her sleeping for longer. She's in the last like couple weeks, she started to stretch at night a little more. So that's better. But yeah, the games that start at like 7:30, like the normal time, any Pelicans home game, it's like you're rolling the dice.
See, so, I basically know that I'm gonna have to check out for like part of the first quarter when he goes down, but then he's down and I can watch most of the game. Those West Coast tips, those are a struggle because I have to commit to stay up because that one window where I could get like my primary sleep, that's gone if I'm going to watch the game. And yet I've watched every single one of them, life be damned. And then I'm waking up and going to work in the morning and, we make it work, we care about this thing, like a really bad drug addiction. That's what we do.
It's so true because when she was born, the Pelicans were tied for the 1 seed. And
all she knew was success.
And since then, it's been not great. And yet here I am still like making it work every way that I can. It's just, I think an addiction's a pretty decent way to put it. But it's it's been like the different ways to watch games with, so I haven't had even tried to watch my phone. That's just a bridge too far for me. Like I'm watching on the I'm just usually like holding her or I've got her like I'm using my foot like I'm like a drum like on the bouncer. Well, it's just to bounce her while I'm watching the game and like that at least keeps both hands free. And it's like so there are strategies when I know she's not going to sleep. But that's probably the best I got. I mean, are you doing anything like how are you when you want to watch it in front of a television instead of on your phone? Like, what's crazy
brother?
Stuff
I don't
make that work.
I don't have those options. If I'm watching it on a television, it is only because he is asleep. I really just try to like. You have kind of a half hour. You have some wiggle room of like when to start the process and when you can get him down. And my big thing is like trying to see as much of the game as possible. Yeah. So like I'll watch on the phone. There's a cut point though. Like if we're like real close to putting him down, game's just got to go on the side for a little bit. Sometimes I'll luck out and like I put him down at halftime and I will have watched on my phone. Then I move to the TV.
That's like winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And it doesn't happen often. I'll be honest. It's not, it is not something that happens very often, but yeah, the bouncer totally that's how we eat meals is like throw him in the bouncer, get that thing going. But maybe it lasts an hour, maybe it lasts 10 minutes. You never know. You just don't know. It's a complete roll of the dice, especially with my guy. He's been a bit of a porker right out the gate. He's like 80 plus percentile in height and weight. So we're already like 26 inches and 17 pounds right at 4 months. He's a monster, which means he can do all the things early. So he started rolling over early, started sitting up early, like he flails around like crazy. So lots of ways to wake up. Lots of ways. Yeah. So I lose that battle. I don't if the game's not for me, I'm gonna miss a portion. It is what it is. I'll watch it in the morning.
I've like toyed with the idea of a projector in the nursery. because like if you're watching on your phone, that's a bright light and that's gonna be distracting.
Well, you gotta dim it all the way. You got to dim it all the way, and then you hold it behind the shoulder so that the light is coming from behind and not hitting the baby's face. Because I have him like tucked in my arm there, and then the phone's like right back here. You got to you get creative. If I could put a kickstand on him with a little, maybe a cup holder, something like that. Babies need to come with that standard.
Yeah. Well, nice. It sounds like we got a couple of basketball players, or maybe volleyball players in my case. Who knows? She was very also like high percentile height and weight. She was also 41 weeks, so a little on the late side, but she's come down in the weight. She's still very tall. Or so we'll see where that ends up. But anyway, lots of fun kid stuff.
I'm sure everybody's thrilled and wants us to keep going into diapers and diapers and baby tools and whatnot, but we can move on.
Yeah. So the Pelicans. So looking at the standings here first, they're in 10th. They're a half game up on being in the play-in. They're 2 games back of the 5th seed. We keep talking about this, and eventually it seems like that there's going to be some separation. There has not been. There's a bunch of reasons for that. Injuries to star players, or not star players, but just important players. There's teams that have not really gelled since trades. I am just so happy that the Dallas Mavericks experiment with Kyrie so far has been exactly what we expected. They can score, but they can't stop anyone. So,
they cannot defend a lick.
They're 3-7 in their last 10 games. So there's still a lot of tightly compacted stuff in the West. And what's your sense? I mean, as far as how this team's played recently, when you look at the other teams that are kind of they're really close to. I mean, are you feeling good after the last few games? And are you worried? I guess relative to whatever you expect to happen down the stretch. How are you feeling?
I have been kind of along the same lines. I kind of started the season, even when we started overperforming, I had kind of a bar for how I thought we'd perform, and I had a win total in my head. And when we started looking like we were pacing ahead of a 50-win team, I still was not changing my expectations, and it kind of helped me weather that initial storm. And then the real dark times came during that 10-game loss streak, with BI just coming back from the toe, and now Zion's out for unknowable length of time. So now we've had to tamper things down, and now it's just get into the play-in and try and get a decent position in the play-in. That is the only goal. I think the way that I look at it right now, you're right. We've all been looking at the standings saying someone's going to pull away. But when I look at every single one of these teams, it's just as likely that Phoenix and Memphis fall back into this pack and end up making it an even larger logjam. It may be a logjam from 3 to 10 within a couple of wins of each other. It's going to be an absolutely wild stretch run. As far as the Pelicans themselves, I think a lot of the teams in this place are experiencing something very similar, in the sense that everybody's missing players, and everybody's missing them for decent numbers of time, decent length of time. It's not 1 game, 2 games. They're missing guys for weeks. And when that happens, whoever is the most consistent right now, whoever puts out the most consistent effort, which if you look at Western away records, no one plays well on the road. Yeah. We're kind of all the same thing. All of our role players are absolutely horrible on the road. So if you're missing a star, you're probably going to lose. And at home, it's 70 to 75% win percentage. I don't feel great. I don't feel bad. I feel like the play-in is their destiny. Am I expecting them to finally have a stretch of good games where they put it together? No, I'm looking at the roster and who's available, and I still have problems. It doesn't matter how well they've played in an individual game when I still don't know when Larry and Jose are coming back. And as much as we've talked about this roster, and the NBA as a whole has talked about us having a very deep roster, we have a deep roster of talent and of different styles of player. We do have definitive skill weaknesses, though. And those are absolutely exacerbated by the fact that Larry and Jose are not playing. We do not have a playable big rotation even still. We're lucky right now that, if we see some small front courts, Jax becomes playable, and that helps. I don't know what to do with Billy. I don't think there's ever going to be much to do with him here. And there's not another option there. So you go Herb small ball lineups. We're just testing that out for the first time. So sometimes it's going to look good. Sometimes it's going to be bad. Yeah, I think I just want consistent energy level. That's all I can really ask for. And if they lose that way, then I think I'm okay. I just struggle when, I've been playing kind of a chicken or the egg thing for the last 3 or 4 weeks with BI and CJ. Like clearly they get into a lot of ISO stuff. That is not what the offense is designed to be.
Yeah.
The question is why they do it so often. And a lot of it is like they're down by double digits all the time and they're trying to fight their way back. And like they think their shot's probably the best one. The other has been like on the road, our role players have been really, really bad. Herb's shooting regression has been tough, and he's usually the one that's left open. So all that being said, I think we get into the play-in. I think it's mainly because I think that logjam is just going to continue until guys get back. And whoever can find it, like this team has found it before. Hopefully we're pretty close to having Jose and Larry back. They found that before, and last year they didn't have the option of getting Zion back to add to that, and this year they do. At least
we thought they might.
At least
they
hopefully,
made us think,
right? Maybe.
Yeah. A lot there. You mentioned the home road stuff first, and I don't know the what's going on with the Warriors is like almost mind blowing to me, because you would think the teams that have those types of home road splits are the young teams, the teams that feed off the crowd energy and that don't get like are gonna get like super high highs and super low lows. The Warriors are a team of vets mostly. I know that they're trying to do this 2 timelines thing, which isn't working out great for them, but like it blows my mind that they're so good at home and so good on the road. Like it's baffling. Like you see like Draymond Green and Klay Thompson, these guys that should be, I mean, I don't know if I call Draymond a steadying presence, but like just generally speaking, they're a team of vets. And I know they're, we were talking before the podcast, where's Andrew Wiggins? But like, I know they're missing him. And they just got Steph back. But even with the Steph, I haven't looked at their home road splits with Steph back. I know they're a much better team, obviously, with Steph. Shocking. But it is wild. And I think none of the other teams in that kind of group are as nearly as bad as the Warriors. But then the Pelicans are also like not quite as bad, but still not good home road splits, what you were referring to. But
right.
I do wonder, just before we get to more your comments around the Pelicans themselves, like I'm looking at the teams that are below the play-in, and you were saying before the pod, and I agree with you, Utah and Oklahoma City, those are 2 teams that like, if we get in, great. If not, oh well. See ya. We'll join the lottery sweepstakes. But I mean, I'm looking at Portland. At least I think there is a threat there. Like, I mean, they've been super inconsistent, but
they're bad.
They can't tell Dame that we're just going to mail it in, right? They just got Simons and Nurkic back, and so they're getting healthy.
I don't know if getting Nurkic back is a good thing. I'm not sure about that. It is because they don't have bigs, but it's also not because he was really terrible to start the year. That's it,
man. I don't even know why we didn't. I 2 guys I just picked up to try to salvage my fantasy basketball season in the playoffs, and
both played for me. Both played for me. They're cast-offs.
I should have given Adam a chance to gloat. Like we have a 10-team league. We're both in, and we're both in the playoffs. But I lost LeBron and LaMelo right before the playoffs started. So I stopped looking. So,
no, we're both screwed. So this pod is also this is the death of both of our playoff runs. I had unfortunately like untimely missed games by Kyrie, James Harden. Cam Johnson randomly showed up as injured, like guys I can't drop.
You made your bed by having Kyrie, so
yeah. Look, I asked for it by putting one too many bigots on my team. This is what you do. It was a struggle. I am the guy in our league that is. If you go look at the transaction count, I am the guy that is adding max players every week. Get all the numbers. I'm fighting the battle every week. But here's the thing about that. In fantasy basketball, that's what loses in the playoffs, because I don't have the star power that the other guys have. And unfortunately, I started off with a lead, and then some untimely, like Cam Johnson, Jalen Williams, everybody's missing games. I don't have enough players to make up the numbers. I'm going to win 3, maybe 4 categories. I don't have a shot at a 5th. So we're both toast here. I'm not as bad as you because, hey, as much as I signed up for Kyrie, you signed up for both LeBron and Anthony Davis. So you asked for this too.
I have 3 Lakers now with D'Angelo Russell. I have 3 Lakers. Like
what? You asked for it too, my friend.
I know, I did. But
anyway, Portland as a threat.
I mean, like their schedule is not great down the stretch, and so I mean they do have a decent number of home games left. Like I just wouldn't. The West is so messy, and Dame is Dame. He's having an MVP caliber season that obviously he has no shot to win because the team is below 500. But like, I don't know. I think that as we talk about the Pelicans play and viability, I think you're right. I think they would have to have some sort of like terrible situation happen for them not to get in. But that's not a reflection of their play. It's a reflection of everyone else, right? So
it's the West. It's just the West.
The problem is I have zero confidence that they'll get above like the 9 seed. I just don't.
Feels right.
Look, the Lakers are treading water better than I expected without LeBron. I mean, that the deadline they had was awesome. It's impossible to refute that, I feel like. And then I don't know what to make of Minnesota. The milk carton logic applies for Karl-Anthony Towns too. Whenever he comes back, like
where is he?
What happens though? Like I feel like everyone with Minnesota before the season was like, this team, they're going to win 50 plus games in the regular season. I don't know what the hell they're going to do in the playoffs. It's kind of been like I don't know how they reintegrate Towns when they haven't had the chance to play him and Gobert together significantly. Like they're a team like if I'm a playoff team, I want to play them because like either we have more talent than you. Or if Towns comes back, we don't believe that you're going to figure out how to play with all these guys together. And so that seems like a nice matchup for most teams, I feel like.
Yeah, I think they're coming into the year. So Christian, Christian is friends with Dane Moore. Dane Moore covers Minnesota Timberwolves. They were both very high. We talked about it on a podcast. I was a little bit lower on them. My struggle is that I just think putting Rudy and Karl-Anthony Towns sounds like a good idea, but when you think about what has made Cat a more effective player in the past, it is having the ball go into his hands in more spots on the court, having him more involved in the offense, and having Rudy stuck in the paint like the cement post he is, just kind of makes it so that Cat has to spend a lot of time out at the 3-point line, has to spend a lot of time floating around the outside. And so you're getting him touches, but you're getting him touches in places that you want Ant to have touches. Like you don't really want, I don't want Karl dribbling in. I want all that gritty stuff he had last year where he's touching it in the mid post and shooting turnaround jumpers or deciding to go dunk on somebody. Like he played pretty nasty last year. And that element of him when he was available, God knows where he is now or when he's coming back. It's like Pelicans fans, we're not the only ones.
Right.
We are not the only ones with guys missing in action. Andrew Wiggins, who knows where he is? Karl-Anthony Towns, God knows where he is or what he's up to. And LeBron's on a scooter. So, it's not just us.
No.
I think it'll be interesting when they bring him back because I think that team invites Cat to do things that in the past have disengaged him on the defensive end and have disengaged him through segments of games. I don't know that fits incredible. And I've loved with him being gone, Ant has been on the ball an absolute ton and has been played his way into shape. Notably, he was chubby when he came in and it got better. And you've gotten the best out of him now, but do you still get the best out of him when you're reintegrating Karl back in? We shall see. Will they even have the opportunity to integrate Karl back in? I don't know.
Yeah. Very similar situation to New Orleans. I think that's it's a very interesting, I don't want to talk, we don't have time to talk offseason on this spot, but that is a very interesting situation coming up this summer with Minnesota. Cause you also got Naz Reid there, who's had really good moments this year against the Pelicans, no less. But yeah, so getting into New Orleans and kind of how they played recently, you brought up a lot of good points. And I find myself kind of wondering just, they certainly are missing skill sets, right? Like they have 3 guys who you can trust to knock down a 3. Like that's a problem. And whereas while Devontae Graham is often and San Antonio actually, playing reasonably well because of course he was going to, right? That was always going to be the end game here.
He's getting 20 shots a game now. Like he's getting the absolute top tier version of Devontae Graham is, hey, get out there and chuck it up. And he's going to make he's going to make 9 out of 20, or he's going to make 11 out of 20 because he knows it's green light, Monte Ellis style, green light.
Yep. So the Pelicans have 3 guys who you trust to make a 3-pointer, which is tough. And so I find myself with the guys they have and the lack of certain skill sets that you mentioned, that's very real. I find myself wondering, like, how should they be adjusting how they play and who plays with who during this stretch? Just to, they've got to. I feel like they got to test some stuff, because your points around the isolation heavy basketball from BI and CJ are very fair, and it just feels like they're not doing as much as they could to optimize the talent they've got on the roster, and the lack and also the lack of talent they've got in certain cases. And so, like, I found myself recently wondering, like, is there how can you get CJ and BI off ball more, not to reduce their usage or their shot attempts, but just to create some sort of different type of offense that defenses have to spread out defenses. If you've got CJ or BI on the ball, you have at most two other shooters flanking them that teams will care about, which is a problem. Like, it is.
You mean
it's what we saw with Bledsoe and Steven Adams? Like,
you would enjoy them both not getting doubled on every possession when they step inside the arc?
I mean,
that's something you would like to see.
It would be welcome development, right? And so I don't know. I've just been kind of wondering what change they can make to rotationally to make that happen more. And so, I mean, I think what's been going on with Herb recently has been great. You mentioned his regression in 3-point shooting. Very true. He's been playing better, but that's highly correlated to how he's making his shot making, right? He's doing some other things when he doesn't have the ball in his hands. And even when he does have the ball in his hands, he's been doing some more playmaking and things that I think that he should be empowered to do, or else he's going to just be a statue in the corner and teams are not going to pay attention. They're going to overload the other side of the floor. But I cannot wonder if there's better ways, even if it's not changing the starting lineup, it ways to join BI and CJ with other skills that can move them off ball more and really put them in position to attack mismatches, and you spread the defense out versus what they're seeing, on seemingly every possession. I mean, I'd love to kind of get your take on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we kind of have fantasy lineups in our head that we know Willie will never play or never start, but that
let's go
feel like they'd work. Like, I mean, the thing is, like, when you look at what skills people have, I think this is where things become a struggle. Josh Richardson, for the surprise that he's been since he's been added, I think people kind of forgot, like, he did always have this skill set. I think he had been pressed into being a starting guard in a lot of places after being a successful rotational guy, and it showed his warts. And I think he still has some, but he also has some nice things that he can do that a lot of our guys can't do. He's done some nice, like, two-man setup play, a little bit of pick and roll. His lobs are better than
Jonas is like, 90% of
the team. Yeah.
This guy passes me the ball. I love it.
Yeah. He looks to do that. Like, he penetrates and he can either make the mid-range or he plays the option with the big. Like, they know when they roll that he's actually going to look at them. That's a nice development. We don't have a lot of guys that can do that. Like, when I say skill sets that we don't have, one of them is we don't have very many, like, good ball handlers. CJ and BI are both very, very good ball handlers, but even CJ in a half court set, like, I can't exactly expect him to break somebody down all the time or to manipulate space in the same way that, like, Jose does. Like, I think you really, really miss Jose in that Sacramento game, because the only person who had the ability to slow that game down and really manipulate space and force a defense to move around him and to get people slightly into better positions, potentially set up Jonas to help engage him more. That's the only guy on the roster that can really do that. Like, I think fantasy lineup, I would love to see Dyson in there. I'd love to see Trey in there. Trey, it's the tough part for me with him is, like, he's the best shooter on the team. It's not really worth talking about. Like, he has the best shot on the team. That perimeter jumper is insane. It's especially insane from a catch and shoot. It's especially insane when when he knows he's got space, and he's experimented during the year with being really aggressive. In his last couple of games, he's been really aggressive. He's been firing on tough closeouts. I think you'd like to see him, and ideally, like, Dyson at least adds a secondary passing ability, a little bit of comfort on ball, and at least an athletic body that's not going to get pickpocketed that you could potentially do something with. And for what it's worth, while he's not an incredible 3-point shooter by any means, his 3-point shooting when unguarded, his Rondo threes are great. They're above league average. So it's survivable. Josh Richardson, not exactly the 3 guy. So I think we're going to keep seeing a lot of the same. It's going to be JV Herb anchored lineups, and we'll get splashes of Richardson, and we'll just hope that that's Trey more often than not. And that's probably like the most we can ask for, just based on what we know. But I just think we really do not have enough talent to say like much more than that. Because like even Dyson, as much as we like him, the handle is not very refined yet. The jumper is not good, but it's when left open, when he has time to completely set up and go through his whole process, it's fine. But it's long and it's kind of jerky. I don't want to put too much on that. And like, if you put him out there for long periods of time on ball right now, like you're going to see bad stuff. Yep. At some point you're going to see bad results. Anyway, I'm now tangenting and
I think
fiddling off into the wind.
No, so like I think with Dyson specifically, I'm with you. I think that like Dyson Daniels to me is much more viable as a 5th starter when Zion's back than without him. Like I think he's still too tentative. He's more like a Alonzo Ball connector than a guy who's really going to get to the rim, right? And that I think that skill will come. Like I think he has the ability to do that. I don't think he'll be afraid of attacking inside the free throw line or anything. But I do think that what the Pelicans need around their main guys to be successful is someone who isn't afraid to attack and can make the defense, force the defense into making a hard choice. Like I mentioned Najee as a guy who I think could be a good, like, I think so. The issue I'm having is when Herb regresses again back to the missing a bunch of threes, which is kind of feels inevitable at this point. What happens to does the offense go back to being from being below average to like awful again? And so like I don't think the biggest challenge to me is I don't think Willie's ever going to consider taking Herb out of the starting lineup. And I think for the Zionless Pelicans to be the best version of themselves, I think it's something you've got to consider. Just because I think either Josh Richardson or Najee, their ability to attack, we saw what Najee did when the guys were out. I know he hasn't played well recently. He's had I don't know what
it's flashed a little bit recently.
Yeah. Like his
flashed a little bit.
Has oscillated so much this season. Like I don't like it's hard to fault him, right? Like he had some great moments, and then the IC is back, so we're going to relegate you to the slow.
Yeah, and he came back from his own injury, he did not look like himself in the first few games back from injury. Yep. He looked very tentative. Like when we look at Najee, we see a fiery ball of chaos, and that ball of chaos it's what you need him to be, even though sometimes that ball of chaos is going to be a wild transition turnover that on a pass he should have never thrown, where he like drops to a knee and does a pose. You live with it because the other side of him is like he'll run into 3 dudes, take a shot in the chest, and make it and get to the line. Yeah. Like that's the whole experience with him.
Yeah. So I feel like I would love to see whether when Nance comes back, whether it's Nance or whether it's Jonas, I'm caring less and less. Again, this is a whole other topic around how the Pelicans have used Jonas this year. But like I feel like without Zion, you've got to have that extra. Like the Pelicans were at their best with him in point Zion land. You're not going to replicate that, but the concept is still applies. Where if you have CJ, Bi, Trey, all those guys flanking, defenses have to make a really tough choice. And so, I think I would like to see more of that, where you have Jonas at the 5, you have other guys who you can trust, who are not, like you said, the Pelicans do have a lack of ball handlers. They've got some guys who can do it well enough, I think, with the level of talent the Pelicans do have surrounding them to be successful. I would just kind of like to see that, just to open up a new door, right? And not to have to resort to CJ, Bi, ISO ball, because they're both. I feel like it does do them a disservice because of how they are so good, but when defenses can overload on them, like you have to be like Luka or Harden or LeBron to get through that consistently. And so it's not a knock on them to say they're not that level of player, but it's been tough.
Yeah, I mean, neither of them has the size or first step that is going to split double teams, get around guys. Like they both, CJ creates space with his skills. He creates space with his hips, with his elbow, with a step back. BI, on the other hand, BI is all like footwork and shooting over the top of you. Like you could face guard him with two guys, and if he feels like he can get up a half second earlier than you, he may take the shot. But like therein lies the problem. If you're getting double teamed every time down, you got to find a way to get to other stuff. I just think it's hard to diagnose any one problem with as many as we've had, because like the ball handling responsibility, the same, like you said, the same concept as Zion. If more people can do the handling, then the burden of ball handling comes down. You don't have one person in that situation all the time where they're going to get overtaxed. I think that's kind of the thing, is like you're trying to aggregate the skill you don't have. And with Zion, it's overwhelming how much he can encompass and how much he can stuff. So you decorated the house with all of the other things, and we have window dressing, we have nice doors, everything, but like we don't have walls. So we have like some things that could look good if we could put the walls up, but the walls aren't coming anytime soon. I think I'm with you in that even if Najee doesn't have the most sophisticated handle in the world, his handle is good going downhill. He is good protecting the ball, getting low and coming up through defenders, attacking the paint. I think kind of the same thing with Richardson, except Richardson has at least some mid-range options when he's decisive. He has a little bit of a floater. He has a little push shot. Like he can pull up from mid-range and you can like that shot. So I'm with you that in that there is more versatility there. And at least it's not, CJ kind of dragged us out of that Dallas game. I fully thought that Dallas game was going to be a loss. Just watching how it was I was like, okay, Kyrie's going to make a million shots and we're going to be in deep here. And CJ, just like I said on our pod, he had 1,000,001. And thank God, because that's all it ended up being, was like one after another, just go down, take the shot. I'm with you in that. I think I would like to say that some things are going to be tried. I could see Najee getting plugged in, like in the space of Richardson as like a faux two guard. I'm also just hoping BI plays in the next game. That's probably the primary focus is, does BI immediately come back or does he miss games? But I still think like at the end of the day, we have a lot of stuff. We have a lot of stuff that's very easy to make sense when Zion's here, and when he's not here, a lot of incomplete stuff, and we push him into spaces where guys' flaws get revealed. So I think it's pretty complicated to think that there's any one thing we can fix, because like our big rotation is still bad until Larry's back. Our ball handling situation only gets better when Jose gets back, and hopefully they're close.
Yeah.
Sigh. Yeah. Depression.
It is interesting. Like you mentioned about how this team is kind of crafted to be at its best with their best player, which is like how you want to build if you're trying to win a championship, that's how you should build your roster. But at the same time, I feel like the idea of getting CJ in the first place, there was obviously he brings a ton of credibility to the organization. He's a great player. There's a bunch of I would still do that trade every single time when offered. I was actually just talking. I was tweeting with some one of the Knicks guys I follow, and just talking about how that Josh Hart contract and every step of the way, I think it worked out well for everybody. It's great when you can say something like that. It's like Portland got a first round pick for him, lottery protected, but still expiring deal, get a first round pick for him. Knicks got their guy who they're going to definitely sign to an extension. The Pelicans got CJ. Like it was, and Larry, like that was.
He gets to go back and play with one of his best friends in New York for Tibbs, and he's like the quintessential Tibbs guy.
He really is, yeah. But yeah, no, I feel like with CJ almost like I don't necessarily think like he's the guy who like maximizes whose role is maximized with Zion. Like I feel like he's the one guy who you get him because in the event that your best two players, BI and Zion, have to miss time, it's a pretty good option as a secondary scorer. And so that's one of the things that's a little frustrating to me is to see that how well that panned out down the stretch last year and how much that isn't happening this year. And then, I mean, and there's
because he doesn't get to be your secondary scorer. He doesn't get to be your secondary scorer. He has to be your primary scorer.
Well, yeah. So anyway, we've maligned about the Pelicans for long enough as far as the
there's still hope.
There is.
There's still hope. I don't mean to show up on your podcast and bring depression. There's still hope somewhere. I mean, maybe.
Schmidt and I got yelled at all the time for being negative about the coaching and all that. So that you're not.
Well, then I'm on brand.
Like,
there you
join
go.
the club. Yes, exactly.
I'm on brand.
So let's wrap up by talking about the stretch run here. So the Pelicans, if it matters to anybody, I think what you said about home versus road is super critical here. In that, looking at the remaining strength of schedule, it does not encapsulate that. The Pelicans do have more home games than road games remaining. I believe that's right, by a couple. They played 32 home games. They played 34. Yeah, they played 34 away games, 32 home games. They got a couple more at home. They have the 27th easiest strength of schedule remaining, just as far as opponent win percentage is concerned. And it is pretty staggering. Like as you get closer to the end of the season, that like the difference between the easiest schedule and the hardest schedule gets further apart, just because there's it was smaller numbers we're talking about. So the Pelicans have their opponent winning percentage combined the rest of the way is 464. I mean, the best teams they'll face are essentially the top three teams in the West. Or top three teams. They've got one against Denver, which happens. That game against Denver, probably not late enough in the season for Denver to pack it in. Who knows?
Well, damn it.
Who knows? Who knows? I mean, like Memphis is calling off because Ja's out. Kevin Durant's out. The Kings, like, mind blowing that they're probably going to be the 2 seed at this point. Like health, obviously, first and foremost. They've been a super healthy team. But like, I think so. The Nuggets are 6 games ahead of them. Maybe they just start to I would look to see if it's like a back-to-back. Like I would assume every single back-to-back the rest of the season, Denver's just taking one of them off. So I don't have Murray. I
imagine Murray doesn't play any of those.
Yeah. So they play. So interestingly enough, they play. So the Nuggets play March 27th against the Sixers. Then they have 2 nights off. Then play the Pelicans at home. And then go to Phoenix the next night. So it's the front end of a back-to-back. So
congratulations,
depending
Phoenix.
On what's going on with, or if they want to play, they want to beat Phoenix down further. Maybe if they want to try to avoid being in the same bracket as Kevin Durant, there are you could make an argument that
we have some machinations.
New Orleans, yeah,
we do have some machinations available.
Yeah, so if they're let's say Memphis can use the crater, and then suddenly. I guess if Phoenix can get to the 3 seed because Memphis keeps falling, then maybe Denver probably just wants them to win, and so maybe they do play guys against us and then rest versus Phoenix to keep Phoenix in that 2-3 playoff matchup. So we'll see. Usually with the Pelicans it works out for the worst, so I'm sure they'll play against the Pelicans and rest against Phoenix. But so
moral of the story: things are going to get weird late in the season here.
Yeah, and even so, it's kind of I don't know if funny is the right word, probably depressing, but the Pelicans, their last game of the season, or the third to last game of the season is against Memphis, and before 2 weeks ago, you thought Memphis is going to be a lock for the 2 seed. That's a game they may rest players for, and now Ja's out, and who knows? Maybe Ja's back, and that's his first game back. That's probably what's going to happen.
Even if he's back, though, Steven Adams now out for the regular season. And
so now Jonas is all right, I can finally do well against.
I can finally beat Memphis. I can finally do something in the paint in Memphis. Yeah. Weird. So that's another one that's going to be it's not quite milk carton because we know where Steven Adams is, but where he is missing because he can't play. It's interesting how much they're they do not have true veterans on that roster. Adams not only plays that role, but also is in a more traditional big playing off of attacking. No. Yeah. Austin 3 for 16. I'm never letting that go. I'm calling him that for the rest of his life. Nice. It's weird. It's wild to see how reliant they are. And with him gone, even when Ja's back, which I imagine now, now that charges have been tossed out, everything, I think or charges are never even going to come. I think we're going to see him back sooner rather than later. It wouldn't shock me if it ends up being 6 games. I had heard some theory about him potentially missing the rest of the season because of the damage to, the NBA's brands, because he just got kind of anointed as the next face of the league. But I think even if he's back, if they don't have Steven Adams, they have a problem. Brandon Clark tore his Achilles. that means you have a couple of help bigs that like you now need Xavier Tillman to be your real center. Like Jaren, as much as he's a center, does not play that role.
Or never getting into foul trouble, Jaren Jackson, which
right. Well, but he also plays so well off of Adams because he can just fly around and do like the super Rob Williams thing and knock everybody's shots down. He doesn't have to just do face up rim defense. Yeah. But the foul thing, it's better. He does still foul. Anyway, now we're becoming a Memphis podcast. I'm sorry, I'm doing this to you again.
No. I mean, it's funny you bring that up because Schmidt and I talked last podcast about who would we rather, like, if the Pelicans were to escape the play-in and be like the 7th or 8th seed, who would you rather play? Obviously, it's not really a conversation anymore because Memphis doesn't look like the lock 2 seed. But it was an interesting discussion. Like he was saying he'd rather play Denver than play Memphis. And this was like a full strength Memphis team versus full strength Denver team. And I was sitting there saying, I disagreed. And I said, the one reason that Memphis is so attractive to me is putting Zion up against Jaren Jackson. If you get Jaren Jackson in foul trouble, which assuming Zion's back, there's no better guy in the league to try to make that happen.
Right.
Then suddenly Memphis becomes less superhuman and beatable, I think.
Also, give me Sacramento. Where was Sacramento in that conversation? Because
we weren't talking about them because we didn't think they were going to be the 2 seed.
Yeah, they were farther down the road. I mean, I'm happy with who the 2 seed is now, and I hope they play. That's who I would like to see. As much as incredible as the offense is, and as many threes as they shoot, they don't defend either. And at some point, like, when you're not able to spend half of your game in transition because it's the playoffs now and we're studying you game in and game out for a series, it'll be really interesting to see what happens when they're forced to play half court ball, shorten their rotations, and have to defend you because you have guys that can score from a lot of different places. Very, very interested to see. Like, I would feel good about that matchup. But I get it. They weren't in your conversation then.
Well, no, I mean, my argument for the last couple of months has been like, if they've been like the most healthy team in the league essentially all season long, and if you're assuming in the playoffs, teams are going to get like other teams have been like a little bit more cautious with their stars, and suddenly you've got you go from this Kings team that has played a lot of teams less than full strength, and I'm not trying to discredit the Kings. They are a really good team. They're not like a fake 2 seed. I don't think that at all. But correct. I do think playing against good teams with healthy rosters versus what they've been able to kind of see throughout the season, I'm with you. Like I think that they may run into some challenges. So I don't want to say that they're a first round out, but I think there are a lot of teams that are going to give them trouble in the first round, like a lot.
I concur. Also, like, granted, for us, I need Larry there. Larry, the Sabonis killer. I need him for that matchup. Otherwise, my prediction there is it's not a good one.
Yeah. So anyway, let's just talk about the remaining schedule a little bit more, and then we can wrap up. But so the Pelicans got a couple. They play the Thunder tonight at home, and then they got Portland tomorrow. So at least you got a home back-to-back. That's nice. Then they got the Lakers at home on Tuesday, which should be, BI is gonna be back for that one at least. Like even if
feel pretty confident about that.
Yeah, and so like this is obviously I don't think anyone's shocked to hear that this is a critical stretch for them because they've got 3 home games against decent teams that are right next to them in the play-in race, and then they've got 4 games against garbage. Like they've got. That's probably not fair. Charlotte's actually been sparky.
Got to watch out. Kelly Oubre with 20 shots is a dangerous thing.
So they've got Houston on the road. Then they got on the road twice. So they're in Houston for a couple games. Then they're home against the Spurs, home against the Hornets. Like the next 7 games defines what the rest of the season looks like to me. Like if they've got to do really well. Like I think if they want a real chance to get out, like I'm very nervous if they get the 9 or 10 seed. I'm very nervous. Like if they get the 7 or 8 seed and you're getting Zion back, we're feeling fairly. We can be optimistic about getting out of the play-in. But if they're 9 or 10, tough. And so I think we'll find out over the next 7 games whether it's realistic or not for them to get above 9.
And yet, I'll still caution everyone that just because you hear the names Houston and Charlotte, look at where the games are played. Just because you're playing Houston twice does not mean that it's going to be like you would think. The Spurs, the hard-charging Spurs, just knocked off your Denver Nuggets last night with an all-around offensive effort where, everybody on their team scored 15 points. It's just don't count the wins. One thing, it doesn't matter whose name is on there. When it comes to the road stuff, you can't really count the wins. Hopefully we start to see a little bit of fight. I think the thing that I have continued to be irritated with throughout the season, regardless of who's been in and out, and I get that, like, this has probably been a really hard season for the players to take because of how it's gone. Like, they tasted the top end of success. They saw themselves moving toward the model that they are designed to be, and it was working. And it was working at the top of the league, and it looked like they were going to get real separation. And then that got ripped away from them, and they fell right into one of the worst losing streaks of any non-tanker this season. And then getting BI back has not been this automatic, everything feels better. I think it's a lot harder for BI to lift up other people than it is Zion's presence because of what Zion's gravity and his playing style tends to be.
Yep.
So I think we're looking at games we should win. But the thing that we have not recaptured is the fight that we had last year. I told people last year, the final, that final run of games after CJ came here, I used to tell people when they were going to games that even if we were up against an incredible opponent, you could count on a fight every night. That was one thing that we knew we were going to get out of a lot of these same guys. Mm-hmm. And for what it's worth, we have not gotten that consistently. And there's been a lot of injuries. There's been a lot of problems. But I would like to see them find, the third quarter has always been a quarter of doom in New Orleans. Last year, it wasn't. Last year, it was the quarter where we punched you in the mouth and made the game closer than you wanted it to be, even if you were up 16 at the half. We need to find that again during this stretch.
Except for the Clippers playing game.
True. The Clippers playing game without Paul George.
And with Tony Snell.
Yeah, fun times. But it'd be nice to see these guys start to feel that again, start to fight like that again. And I think come hell or high water, whether or not it's maybe harder to ask for that in December and January than it is now. This is the final run. You are facing elimination from the entire play-in process. Your back is officially against the wall, and you got guys that are still hurt. You got to give everything every night. Luckily, these are lineups granted, Charlotte. I look at Charlotte and I do have weird problems there. Charlotte has athletic bigs. I do not have many right now. Charlotte has guys that are going to just chuck it up from the 3-point line. I do not. I lose that math equation on a nightly basis. Yep. There's a way you could lose those Charlotte games. Yep. It's out there to be had. Houston's a little different. It's basically Jalen Green has to burn you or you should win. But I would just say there are reasons to be optimistic like this. There are still some good matchups, but don't let the strength of schedule thing convince you that this is made in any way. They got to fight in the famous words of Willie Green.
Yeah.
You got to fight. Unfortunately, we've gotten to the point where there is no time left and you got to put it on the floor or we can all go to Cancun early.
Yeah. And that's the with you. And the reason that this next 7 games are so important. And like you said, they're road games against bad teams, that you have to win because then you get road games against good teams. And after that stretch against the Rockets, Spurs, and the Hornets, you have a road trip against the Clippers, the Blazers, the Warriors, and the Nuggets. And then you come back home and play the Clippers again. So they're 1-4 is a very realistic outcome of those 5 games, including that last game against the Clippers at home. And so if you're expecting that, you've got to take care of business in these next 7 games. And the home games against the fellow mediocre teams, and then the away and home games against the bad teams. Because then down the stretch, suddenly the last few games are looking better than anticipated. The Kings and the Grizzlies, the fourth and the third to last games, we talked about it enough, but those two teams could be kind of locked in, and who knows with Ja's back. So like, but you could, and they're both home games, which is the one of the most important.
The number one, the most crucial piece.
Yeah. The second last game, super weird that they're closed. The second last game, their home finale is against the New York Knicks. Like, usually you see like a division opponent or at least a Western Conference opponent. Like, that's strange. Who knows? Like, they could be locked into the 5 seed at that point. Like, they're 2.5 back of Cleveland. I think they played above their weight class a little bit over the last few games, but I think they're as good of a bet for the 5 seed as anyone else. The way how well they're playing, and so I'm hoping that they're entrenched in like the 5 seed with with those last 2 games, and who knows what happens there. And then they close against the Timberwolves on the road, which again, very they have a homestand, and they've got a 1-game trip to end the season in Minnesota, which is just awesome. But so yeah, so I mean, like, that's the stretch. The next few games very important because there's probably a bad stretch coming after that, and then you just got to take care of business again to close the season. So got to fight, and it's it's been a roller coaster all season. So why wouldn't the roller coaster ride continue?
Oh, you know how this is going to work. Like, we're going to drop one of the Charlotte games, one of the Houston games, and then we're going to win one of the games we shouldn't win. Yep. We know how this is going to go. Like, who are we kidding? We know this is going to be, they're going to lose to the team they shouldn't. They're going to beat a team they shouldn't. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess just like everything else. And, our heart rates and pick up your baby aspirin now, because we want to keep you out of the cardiac clinic on the following night.
All right. I think I've kept you for long enough. I know you got St. Patty's Day stuff to go to. Are you bringing the little one? And you dressed?
We are indeed. We're venturing out. We got a little shamrock outfit and everything. We got some friends that live on the route. We're gonna head out there. Dad's gonna get a little sauced.
That's fun. I miss that parade. New Orleans, I feel like does. I mean, they do most parties better than most places, but I think St. Patty's Day is one on the list that they do pretty well. I mean, versus Chicago, when I was living there for a while, obviously, and they dye the river green, which is cool, but it's also usually like 20 degrees outside. So it's like, all right, how much fun is this really? We're all pretending we're having a good time, and we're all cold as hell. Like,
yeah, but you're the only place that could do it. So it's us,
Yeah.
We got, look at that river. There's green beer flowing.
Yeah.
Sadly, with Thomas Morstead, I still hope like the annual tradition of finding Thomas Morstead trashed at Tracy's buying thousands of sandwiches is still a thing. I know he's been playing in Miami. I'm hoping to still see him down there somehow. Feel like that's like one of the memories of like the entire Saints tenure. Go down there, him and his buddies walk in the parade, walk right off the parade into Tracy's mid parade, and just get hammered and buy sandwiches.
We've come so far from running into Marco Bellinelli at Lucy's.
Boy, have we! Boy, have we! At a time of night you really don't want. The Whitney Houston is a plane, and the napkins are a flying.
Hey, Adam, one more plug for all the great work you're doing with Pedro Pascal before we get out of here, and Christian.
Yeah, so
Christian Clark.
catch myself and Christian Clark on the From the Wing pod on the Blue Wire Network, covering all the same stuff that Mason and Schmidt do. If you hear on our pod, like, we've plugged things they've said, tweets they've had, things they've said in episodes. It's a friendly deal over here. We just want to see everybody succeed. We want to see this thing get so good that everybody the tide lifts everyone up. So yeah, catch us on From the Wing. Mainly me leeching off of professional reporter Christian Clark.
Well, we appreciate that. All everything's mutual. We appreciate y'all, and it's a one big happy family. Well, depending on how the Pelicans are doing, I guess, but one big, usually happy family.
We may argue about what things are wrong with them, but we agree that they're wrong.
Yeah. All right. So before we go, we'd like to plug our sponsor, DraftKings. Are you ready for the underdogs, the upsets, and the unbelievable action from DraftKings Sportsbook? The biggest tournament in college basketball is here. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 on college hoops and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, for a limited time, all customers can score a no-sweat bet during round 1 and 2 of the tournament. Go to the app, opt in, and place a no-sweat bet this weekend. If it doesn't hit, you'll get a bonus bet back up to $10. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and sign up with code BOOT. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly, win or lose, only at DraftKings with Sportsbook with the code BOOT. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See our show notes for details. Folks, thanks. We appreciate you tuning in as always. We'll be back soon. Hopefully in good spirits. And after the Pelicans take care of business against some teams tightly packed with them in the standings. But Adam, thank you again. Enjoy St. Paddy's Day, and folks, we'll see you soon.